Hey folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey, and today we're taking a look at this guy right here, Meeple War from Blue Cocker Games. Kind of a civilization game. You're kind of taking your village and building it up and building meeples so that you can wage war on the battlefield that is pretty much in between everybody else's village. Points is the name of the game. You're trying to get to trying to be the first person to score 6 points. If there's a tie, there's tiebreakers, all that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, you are simply trying to either destroy buildings or destroy mechs out on the battlefield. Let's take a look at it and you'll see. The whole point of the game is to get the most points. If there's a tie, there are some tiebreakers in the game, but basically you're trying to get the most points and to get 6 points first. Now there are different ways that you can get points. First of all, you can score points by controlling different structure territories. For example, this tower here in the middle of the battlefield gives the person 2 points at the beginning of their turn if they're controlling that tile. There are other ways you can get bravery points by defeating other opponents' meeples in battle. And if you're attacking, you get 1 bravery point for every meeple that you destroy. If you're defending, you get 1 bravery point for every 2 meeples that you destroy. And once you have gotten 7 bravery points at any point during the game, you get 1 point for doing that. And then finally, the way that you can get points in the game is by destroying other people's buildings in their villages. And there's a number of different ways that you can do that, but generally speaking, buildings are destroyed by placing your meeples in these different defense parts. And once all of the defense zones, spaces, are filled, this is destroyed, and then every meeple that you had on there gets to be placed on your reputation mountain, thus earning you a point in the game. So, as you can see, points can be awarded fairly easily. Each player in Meeple Wars is going to be the governor, mayor, whatever you want to say, of his village in the game, and his village is going against the other opponent's villages in order to gain supremacy in the region, or whatever you would like to say. Generally speaking, though, each of the buildings in your village can do certain things to help you toward that end. Then you also have a pile of buildings that can be built to help you do other things. Your buildings also have different paths that your worker, which is this white cube, can take. And when they rest upon an image, that's the action that that building is going to be able to do that turn. On your turn, all of your workers move 1 space on their track, whichever track you would want to choose. For example, the catapult down here, you can either choose this upper track or this lower track. So you would choose on the initial turn if you're going to go on this track, and then you have to follow that track to its end, or this track, and so on. So for example, in your town center here, you can either build a building, construct some meeples or mechs, or deploy some meeples or mechs. You can either move the worker toward making some of your opponent's meeples move to an adjacent territory of your choosing, or you can help it move toward being able to construct 4 meeples. Here, the catapult, you can move towards destroying meeples that are on a certain territory together, or placing one of your mechs into an opponent's building in their village, which, as I explained earlier, once you fill up all of those defensive positions, that building is destroyed. If you choose to build a building, you're going to take your stack of extra buildings and choose which one you want to build. For example, if you wanted to build the monastery, you could place it face down here. Your extra worker would go on this space, and then at the beginning of your next turn, he's going to move 1 along, and once he moves on a successive turn to the flip spot, you would then flip it over and your worker is placed on one of these tracks. So buildings do take a couple of turns to actually construct. If we wanted to build some mechs, which is this symbol right here. This denotes that I would be able to build 2 mechs. And if I do that, I can build 2 guys and put them into my depot. And then on another turn, I could choose to deploy up to 3 mechs. So I would be able to then take these guys and put them out at the front, at my front gates. Once you have mechs that are actually out on the battlefield, they can actually move from one hex to another hex that is adjacent to theirs. That would include an empty space. So for example, if I wanted to, I can move both of my meeples here, and then I would be able to take from the stack and flip over one tile. When you flip over a tile, you have to make sure that it can be entered the way that you entered it. So for example, if I turned over one of these guys, I would need to make sure that one of the open areas were facing the direction from which I came. So if I move here, this is another structure, and structures can be controlled if you have at least 2 meeples on them. Then at the beginning of your turn, the first phase is your territory bonus phase. Before you start doing anything with your village or anything like that, moving your workers, you check the board to see if you have any territory bonuses that you qualify for, and basically you qualify for them if you have at least 2 meeples there. So once you have meeples on the board, that's where the exploration, moving around, can actually take place. Now once you move here, you place the tile and then they are there. If the tile happens to be one of these ancient gods altars, then you actually have to sacrifice one of your meeples. So for example, if this is the one that actually came up, these 2 guys moved there, one of them would have to be sacrificed, which would then allow me to destroy 1 meeple of an opponent that is anywhere within 2 spaces of that territory. Moving your meeples across a wood barrier is actually forbidden. It's not able to do that. However, you do have, everybody has one of these tree that hides the forest tokens that can be placed anywhere on the board at any point in time during the course of the game, but it can only be placed once, because once it's placed, it cannot be removed or moved. Which would allow you to break that rule. But generally speaking, tree lines are barriers on the game board. Other things that can help you move throughout the board are mines, where you can enter a mine on one part of the board and exit another mine somewhere else on the board. Then there are also tunnels, which look like so. Better, for example, if there is a tunnel here and a tunnel there, if you enter at the beginning of your turn, if you're starting, you can simply, that can be your move, rather than having to move just adjacent. So tunnels are also part of the game board from time to time as well. Other kinds of territories that will be out there are other kinds of bonus territories. For example, this one, if you control that area, that territory with at least 2 mechs, you get a free mech in your depot that you don't have to build using one of your icons. This one allows you to, in combat, take out a mech before the battle actually begins. If you're controlling that territory with 2 meeples, then you can actually, during that turn, while you're controlling it with 2 meeples, you can actually move through tree lines as if they were not there. So those are the different kinds of territories that will be uncovered as you explore throughout the battlefield. Keeping in mind, however, that the whole point of the game is not to explore, it is to gain points. But toward that end, there are other point scoring towers that are in the draw pile, so that exploring is a viable option. Now the way battling works, if a battle does ensue, is like this. If meeples from 2 opposing players occupy the same territory, a battle begins. And the way a battle begins is simply this. Each player would begin simultaneously taking one of their meeples out of the battle until only one player's meeple is left. Orange, also being the attacker, would get bravery points. This is going to be off the side of the board, but they would get bravery points for each of the meeples that they destroyed. So they would get 3. While blue, in defense, only gets 1 bravery point for every 2 that he destroys. So he destroyed 3, that's a factor of 1. And then, as I explained earlier, whoever has 7 bravery points would automatically score a point, and then they would their meeple would come back down here and start the trek up to 7 again. So destroying meeples in battle does get you victory points. However, it's much more efficient to be controlling the towers or to be destroying buildings, because once a building is destroyed, every single meeple that's on it scores a point. Not a bravery point, but a point. And that is generally how the game is played. Each turn is basically just broken up into checking if you have territory bonuses, moving your workers on your buildings, carrying out those buildings actions, getting meeples onto the board, moving those meeples around, resolving battles and sacrifices and conflicts and all that kind of stuff. And whoever has the most, whoever gets to score 6 points first is the winner. So that is Meeple War from Blue Cocker Games. Actually, it's a pretty neat little game. It does go from 2 to 4 players, but I would hesitate playing this game with just 2 players. I did try it with my wife, and it was actually kind of boring and frankly lopsided, because it really determines who picks the better buildings, who wins. If you have a bunch of buildings and you're able to pump out meeples, mechs, I call them mechs, because that's what they kind of are. They're big wooden meeples that are driven by your villagers. So if you're able to pump out more mechs than your opponent in a 2-player game, you're pretty much going to win, unless they're able to cycle. I don't know. It just seemed very boring as a 2-player game for me, but as a 3 or 4-player game, it really kind of shines, probably shines the best at 3, because it doesn't get very much longer than a 2-player game with just 3 players. And the tension of having more than just 2 factions battling each other is absolutely there. It does play pretty fast. There is an expedited setup that I used exclusively, and that was just kind of a way for me to, that's just a choice that I made, because if you don't use expedited setup, you're only starting with 1 building. And I'm just thinking that's going to elongate the game a lot more than I really wanted to for what I'm getting out of this game. So I would recommend just using expedited setup. By all means, give the other one a try to see how you like it, or if you don't like it. But with expedited setup, you have 3 buildings, and you feel like you're in the mix already. You don't have to, there isn't this phase of the game that's kind of boring and slow, and you're just building up to where, okay, now I can finally do something. So that's that. I will say that I think this is a clever design. A little clunky in a couple of places, but not so much so that I think it warrants more discussion here in my review. I think it's a fairly streamlined, take your village or civilization and build it up and then battle other civilizations with it. It is a 30 to 60 minutes is probably your average, and I think that's a pretty good average for what the box says. 30 to 60 minutes is probably right on the mark as far as how long this game is going to be playing after you have gone through your first playthrough and learned how to play the game and so forth. So I think this is a really neat game. It's going to get a 1.5 thumbs up from me, because I like the fact that you can kind of make your own village. You don't all start as vanilla villages and where you're all of your buildings are doing the same thing. You can kind of choose how you start at the beginning of the game, and I like that each of you are a little bit different. I love that the meeples are different sculpts, different molds. This right here is probably the most useless piece in the game, which is unfortunate because it is a pretty cool little cardboard cutout of a Warhammer, but all you use this for is to denote who is the active player. So you take it and you do all of your stuff and then you pass it to the next person. That's all it is, which was kind of underwhelming. I thought that they could have had a little bit of a better idea to use such a cool little piece. So that is Meeple War. I enjoyed it tremendously, as I said before. 1.5 thumbs up from me, from Blue Cocker Games. Go check it out, and hey, we'll see you on the flip side, folks.